Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. I am your host, author, coach, and healer, Andy Grant. You can visit theandygrant.com to learn more about me. Real Men Feel reminds men that they are human beings and have the right to experience and express all of their emotions. We have conversations that most men are not having, but that all men can benefit from. My guest today is Colin Kingsmill. Colin is a super interesting dude, a former Swiss banker who thought he was living his best life until a car accident woke him up to search for a deeper meaning and connection. We have a profound discussion around success, worthiness, and being of service. Colin opens up about his core wound and what led him to creating the Enough Already movement. Enough Already focuses on rediscovering our humanity and living fearlessly with integrity. We also explore the trappings of corporations, potential dangers of spirituality, and the roots of a lack mindset. Horrible internet connectivity on my end caused us to abort our first conversation and pick it up a couple days later. So if you think people suddenly change outfits at the end of the show, you have not lost your mind. Let's do it. Hello, Colin, and welcome to Real Men Feel.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I've really been looking forward to this conversation. We had a brief chat before the show, and I find you to be a very intriguing individual. So let's just jump right in. What is Enough Already?
The beginning of a movement for people that are saying enough already to what's going on in the world. And what do I mean by that? The first thing is I believe people have lost touch with their humanity. Or their sense of humanity, and there's all kinds of ramifications about that we can dive into. I believe people are not living and breathing in integrity, so many of us are living behind masks. We are living afraid all of the time, so whether that's guilt or however fear portrays itself, and we're tied down, we're tethered down by our psychological suffering. So for me, Enough Already is saying no to all of those things, or saying yes to humanity, yes to integrity, yes to being fearless, and no to psychological suffering and becoming free and untethered. That's the idea. It's enough already of kind of the corporatism that has taken over the world, healthcare that's not healthcare, food that is not food, governance that is not governance. The list goes on and on. The idea is to really just start to shake things up in every industry.
So I always like to ask guests for definitions of terms, so we
Sure.
in this conversation and all listeners can be on the same page and make sure. So
Sure.
and I've heard this many times, and I rarely hear a definition. So how would you define humanity?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it is the recognition that we are one lineage on one little rock flying through the galaxy.
I like that.
Basically, I think we tend to forget, right? We tend to forget that we are on a speck of dust flying through a galaxy we know nothing about, and we have created, and especially more recently, all of this division, right? I am this, you are that. Whether it is the country you're from, the religion you are from, sex, gender. I mean, it's just this division of labor almost, but it's not labor, but this like a puzzle we've been subdivided, right? So for me, humanity is putting back together that puzzle and saying we are one.
Okay.
And let's treat ourselves, let's treat others, and let's treat the planet that way.
And then how would you define integrity?
Integrity, for me, is really about living and breathing who you actually are, right? So it's a matter of taking away the mask, or taking it, or not being the actor you are in your day to day with your spouse, partner, husband, whatever, family, et cetera, et cetera. I think we live in a world where people are expected to perform and be something different than who they actually are. So it's really an acceptance of who you truly are, and trying to live that way and breathe that way.
Okay. So Colin, who are you truly?
It's a good question. I really don't know, and I almost actually don't care anymore. When I was living in sort of chapter one of my life, it was all about performative and showing and demonstrating that I was, successful, financially successful, professionally successful, all these things, right? And that was really exhaustive, right, from a personal perspective. So chapter 1, I was all about, showing everybody in the world that I was worthy, right? And I was worthy because I had and did all of these things that were external to me. The sort of the second chapter of my life was really more of that, right? Just performing and doing and always trying to be kind of best in class. And the minute I kind of gave up on that, I settled into who I am today. And honestly, I don't think I'm anything more than a guide or a coach, or I often see myself as pulling people out of the water as they're drowning. So maybe I'm a lifeguard. I was talking with my coaching colleagues this week, and we spoke about wayfinding. It's like I've gotten up and fallen down so many times all over the world that now I'm kind of in a position to have a little more light, or have a little more idea or ability to shine light in corners where people might not otherwise see them. So yeah, lifeguard, coach, Sherpa, guide, any number of those would I think kind of approximate where I think I am today.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about chapter 1, as you're being successful and you said proving your worth. Right. What was life? What was that life?
That life was, I was in my 20s. I was living in Switzerland. I decided to get into banking, financial services, and by all intents and purposes, I was successful. I was, Easter in Saint-Tropez and Christmas in St. Moritz, and all the cars I wanted, and the home that I wanted, and the vacations and all that other stuff. And at one point, I had 25 employees in a financial services company, 2 offices, etc. But I woke up one day, and it was sort of 2001, and I had a traffic accident. I spun out of control in the mountains in my SUV and landed on the side of the ditch and not the side of the lake. So I could have been gone, right? And that was this wake up moment where I realized I was, depressed, full of anxiety, full of unhappiness, that lethal cocktail that so many of us can get and be in. And it was a wake up call. I had ticked all the boxes, right? And I think a lot of people do that these days, right? You have a checklist of what you believe to be the markers of success, right? And for me, I had gotten them all, and I was living my best life, quote unquote, right? And that traffic, there was no other traffic. It was just a spinning out of control, which was a perfect metaphor for my life. I just realized that day, I was like, this is all wrong. I've been on the wrong road. It was interesting, right? You spinning off a road, and I was just on the wrong path. And it was 10 or 15 years in the making, right? Because you go to university, you go and get an MBA, they tell you what success means, they tell you all the parameters of performance and performance analysis and performance reviews. And but this road to success, again, quote unquote, was paralleled with a completely different one, which was a descent into a disconnection from who I was or who I am, or from my body and mind. It was just all sort of cerebral, get, go faster, more, right?
In your 20s and even before that, going through school, did you have a sense of the disconnection, or you just going through the motions? Like, I imagine at some point in those experiences, you were happy or enjoying some of the trappings. Was that the case?
Yeah, no, sure, for sure. I had no. All I knew was that throughout my childhood, I gained, for some reason, I don't know why, because it was idyllic, but they don't teach you these things in school, but I had kind of garnered this core wound of unworthiness. I felt that I was not enough. Therefore, all of those sort of later teen years and 20s were the filling that void of unworthiness. And unfortunately, the void came from that menu that we all know. But look, I mean, it had to have been fun at times. New Year's Eve with Lee Iacocca, and I've been in George Clooney's villa, and I've had so many incredible experiences that I can hardly remember them now. But sure, at the time they were great, but I almost think they were a bit of a kind of a dopamine hit. Like they were a little bit like retail therapy, right? Like you have the experience of the shot, right? And really quickly afterwards, it's like, well, I'm still, I'm at home, I'm alone with, at least in my mind, right? And yeah, that was interesting. I was in a beautiful space or a beautiful place or had an incredible experience that a lot of people might not be envious of, but kind of want to have too. But that feeling wears off really quickly. You get off a private jet and you're in a car being driven somewhere, and it's like, oh, okay. This, I could be in my Toyota, right? And I would be the same person when he's having the context stopped mattering, right?
I'm a high-level initiate of something called the Modern Mystery School. And,
yes.
and one of the teachings of the Mystery School is that happiness is temporary and in response to things. So it's not like you had a lot of happiness reactions, but what we're really after as humans is a state of being, and a state of being of joy.
Yes.
Does that resonate?
Exactly. That's precisely what it is. I had those moments of happiness that it's like sprinkling sugar on a cappuccino, but the joy, the depth was not there. It was always going back to the fast food menu of what's the next experience to give me that dose of happiness.
Yeah.
Because there was no joy.
And I certainly relate to that wound of unworthiness. I grew up this very similar, fairly similar style of trying to fill me up and thinking something must be wrong with me. So were you conscious of this unworthiness, or was it only kind of after that accident that you realized it was there?
So no, I was totally unconscious the whole time. Totally didn't realize it. And it was after the accident and after I gave everything I owned away and moved back to Vancouver, British Columbia, which I thought that would be a good place to discover who I was, to reconnect with who is this, right? What was that all about? I was completely unaware until about, I guess it must have been about 35, and gave everything away, much like a Buddhist might shed the robes of ownership and things, and I thought, well, given this was all wrong, I better just shed any trappings of it, any reminders, and moved back to Vancouver, and I went to, it was called Banyan Books. It's probably still there. It was the spiritual bookshop or the self-help bookshop. And at that time, it was just when Eckhart Tolle was, had released The Power of Now. And there was that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And they were talking about, energy and attraction and spirituality. And I just, in those bookstores where it's all the best sellers, I just went and did this to the whole table. I'm like, I'm going to get a copy of each one of these. Right? And you're smiling, so you might have done the same. It's like, I got to figure this out. Like, why was or I guess that didn't matter, but I needed to become aware because I wasn't. Nobody teaches you that in school as a kid, right?
Yep. Yeah, it is similar timing too. So the thing that really woke me up was when The Secret first came out, and my wife had bought the book. I didn't even know it was a movie. I just saw my wife had bought the book as a gift. She was headed to a Christmas gift exchange in the neighborhood, and I just started paging through this book, and I was like, and the thing that stood out for me was, you can change your thoughts. Your thoughts create your emotions, and you can change your thoughts. And I was brought up with all sorts of different mental health labels and disease
Yep.
and all this notion. I was taught I'm at the mercy of my emotions, and this thing saying I control them. I'm like,
Oh.
what? That was like
Yeah, you're
groundbreaking
like,
for me.
what?
Yeah. So I was like, I'm
It's
reading this.
okay.
I'm like, my wife's like, it's time to go. I'm like, I no, I can't. I don't want to lose this book. So then she told me, like, well, keep that one because I bought one for you for Christmas too. So I got to read it early, and that got me on the road to different mentors and more books and what the bleep do we know and all the
Yeah.
things that were kind of out at that
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
So
I hear you.
you've shared the trappings of success, and they sound like very glamorous trappings. But how do you define success today?
For me, it's all in here. It is finding joy within, right? And being able to share that with others. And to me, there's nothing better than that. Knowing that it's all inside. And like you just said, knowing that your thoughts are temporary and controllable, and you are not destined to be labeled whatever your particular affliction was or is. It is finding the joy inside and sharing that energy with others.
How important is service to you?
It's a good question, because to me, that's all there is now. We live in such complex times, right? And we see so many people around us with mental health challenges and addiction challenges and financial insecurities and food insecurities. I feel like we are in a moment in time where our society is sick. And I think you see evidence of that in all sorts of health figures and mental health figures, and statistics. And I think you also see it in the division that we have in our world, right? So I think being of service to a world that has become unhealthy and disconnected from its humanity is the only thing to do. I think it's the greatest thing you can do, or I can do.
I find that true both ways. That you or I can do. It's still that being of service is that key. And is that something that you had been taught at any point growing up or in school?
Nothing. No. Nope. Zero. For me, and maybe it was the era that I grew up in, sort of, the 80s and the 80s and the 90s. And at that time, it was more about get and have and self, right? And it took a long time to realize how important being of service is. No, it wasn't taught, certainly to me.
Yeah, and I'm not in public school currently, but I doubt the American education system is telling kids not just how important service is, but how good service feels. That was something that I was really surprised by, how much joy I get by helping someone else. And not just being a kid and mowing someone's lawn and helping the old lady across the street and these cliche things, but really helping someone in any way, giving someone directions or coaching someone, working in a professional manner of service, or even just this podcast.
Well, for me, I don't know about you, but it feels like it's the fuel of life. It's the energy of life. It is that joy manifested.
Yeah. You've mentioned a few of the ills of the world and of society currently. Does anything stand at the top of kind of the worst aspect or mindset or whatever you see as being the most destructive thing that's happening?
So I don't know if this resonates with you, but for me, I believe the corporation as a legal entity is probably the greatest challenge we have, because I think what it does is it disconnects us humans from the endeavor, right? So for me, it allows the endeavor to become dehumanized, and therefore it means we can feed people food that is not food, give them health care that's not health, that's not care. That's like, there's all sorts of that. For me, that's it. It's this idea that corporations are run by human beings, but they are no longer human. There's no humanity to them. Therefore, they can commit, acts that are completely heinous and poisonous, and go to war for us, and it's, the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
That's my challenge today is corporatism. The idea that this entity doesn't have a human behind it can be disconnected.
Yep. It's funny. This has been on my mind as kind of a solo show to do, this notion of the corporate entity and how it's dehumanized all of us. And so this year, I have a 20-year career with one of the greatest corporations rated to work at ever, and caring for people, and et cetera, et cetera. But still, the most important thing is stock price. Shareholder value trumps customer value, trumps employee value. So I was laid off. Shocking! I was shocked to be laid off, and my boss was shocked to be laying me off. And that was in April. And my wife, she's currently battling a corporation that's making the news here in the U.S. It's Steward Healthcare. They're closing 8 hospitals in Massachusetts alone.
Wow.
So she's out of a job. Doesn't get PTO, severance, all these things negotiated, not being honored. So I just have 2 real experiences of, corporation that smiles to you in the good times and will cut your throat without hesitation. And because Steward is in bankruptcy court, they really don't have to honor anything. And it's insane how bankruptcy laws in the U.S. of all the debtors, employees are last. So anything promised to you, and they've been pleading with, because it's a hospital, they've been pleading with people, please work here, don't quit, keep showing up until the very last day. And all the people that do are being punished for doing so. It's sickening. So there's my rant.
No, I'm completely with you, and I think you can take that analogy and that story to across the world in any industry and any country. To me, the very fact that the corporation is no longer a human entity, right? But you have to pair that with what I think are, how do I phrase this, are the wrong parameters to live by and live with. And look, I'm all for capitalism. I'm not saying, and I'm all for, companies making a profit and things like that. I'm not by any means sort of Marxist socialist at all, but I think we can do better. I think we can do much, much better, right? And if there was humanity re-injected into the corporation, and we had different markers for that company's success. So it's not just ROI. What if it was return on humanity, return on health, return on happiness, return on joy? I think we need new indicators of success, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's the corporation and the indicators, I think, that both need to evolve, into what's next for us as human beings.
So as humans, more and more individuals are waking up and realizing that checking the boxes and what they thought was success isn't success, but that hasn't elevated to the corporate and legal entities yet.
I think you're right. I think I'm very optimistic. So I might sound, kind of negative on things, but I'm very optimistic. I think people are waking up and going, hold on, this isn't working. We need a new paradigm. We need a new way of doing things. So I'm optimistic. Yeah, absolutely. People are waking up. And one of the benefits of something like social media is that they are waking up, and people can see and people can communicate.
What's the most challenging thing in the way of someone waking up?
Oh, for me, it is being bombarded by the news, bombarded by social media, and being addicted to a coping mechanism, right? So because, and I say to people often, you need a personal protection system perimeter around you. But if you add up things like social media, the negative news cycle, breaking news, and you have uh, a whole series of coping mechanisms that people can turn to, whether it's alcohol or drugs or other types of addiction, um, you have a cocktail that's very difficult for people to get out of, right? So a very sort of negative contextual environment that they live in, that they keep feeding. So addicted to the negativity and then addicted to the coping mechanism is, honestly, I think it's creating zombies.
I agree.
Just, they're there, you can have a conversation with them, but they're having to drink and smoke up or pop pills, or whether it's pharmaceutical or non-pharmaceutical. It's like, where are you? You're gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have all the patience in the world for individuals that are stuck in that place, right? Because it's a very hard place to come out of.
But it can be done, and we're both seeing more and more people do this.
Yes, no, for sure. Like I said, I'm optimistic. It feels as though there's a movement.
Well, there is. You made one.
A light. Yes, no, that's true. Yeah, but you're right. You're right.
So you've got a movement. Real Men Feel is a movement. As more and more individuals are waking up and creating movements, is there a bigger wave that you see or would name?
Look, I think it's time for everyone to take action. It's time to get off the couch and take action. And the best thing you can do is to take action locally, right outside your front door, and join town council, join committees, become a volunteer, get out of the house, switch off the TV, turn off social media, turn off the radio, and get active and involved and participate. It's like it's almost as if we need to realize that life is a participation sport. You got to be involved.
So, Colin, you mentioned that in chapter 1 of your life, you were trying to prove yourself worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Worthy of what?
That's a very good question. I think the answer is worthy of being in the pack, worthy of belonging, worthy of being just like everybody else. And but it's interesting though, because I kind of went way beyond that. It was almost like I wanted to get to sort of that level of acceptance. I wanted a normal life with a 2-car garage and the junk food that all the kids were eating. And I grew up in a forest with a mother who was, into organic everything at the time when it wasn't as fashionable as it is today. Right. So I just wanted to be normal, right. To not be the weirdo, or the guy that nobody talked to and people just kind of ignored. But somewhere along the way, I guess there was also sort of a financial gap that I wanted to fill as well. It was acceptance, and acceptance by my peers, to be just like them. But then, my father was an artist, and at the time, it was quite difficult financially. But yet, my mother's family was from Switzerland, so I would see sort of this diametrically opposite lifestyles, right? And the one where there was quite a bit of lack or financial insecurity, that's where I said I never want to go there again. And on the contrary, I'm going to make up for that. So yeah, a bit kind of a combination of both, sort of financial insecurity at home, and then no sense of self or acceptance at school and with my peers and with Well, I had
Yeah.
two friends, but
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and it was so what I wasn't sure if it was just only inner world or only external, but it was a mix for sure.
definitely a mix. Yeah,
Right.
it was. When I think when you struggle, well, you don't struggle as a child, but when you're in a context of struggle, when you're younger, from a financial perspective, that has a lasting impact. I think I know,
Mhm.
but also this idea of being different and sort of not even bullied. I don't think nobody even bothered to bully me. It was just left out in the corner of the field, right? Because I was just so different.
How do you know that you're worthy today?
Because I'm not looking for anything like that. There, there's no more sort of tension. There's no more uh, there's no more of that grasp, that need to get validated. There's no the need and the desire for validation is gone. Um, that being said, I'm still a bit of a workaholic, so I wonder what that's about. That probably is worthy of being unpacked. But um, certainly coming back from Europe and settling into a place that's in the countryside and very healthy, and also living a healthier lifestyle for sure from a stress perspective and things. Um, yeah, you just kind of feel it in your body when you. I think anyway, at least for me, I feel it in my body. I think I have embodied it. This idea of, oh, all right, well, everything's okay, and everything is as it is, and everything belongs, and it's okay, and there's no more compensation for a void, I guess is the best way to put it.
Hmm, That makes sense. So you shared that in childhood there was a bit of financial insecurity, at least from
Sure.
from your perspective,
Yep.
and you've gone on to be very financially successful.
Hmm.
Some high society people and doings,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So having lived both ends of the financial pole,
Hmm.
what do you think the lack mentality is rooted in so many people?
Damn, Andy, you have great questions. I think it stems from fear, and it stems from a society, I think, that nurtures fear,
Mm,
and um, sells success and sells self-worth, and uh, is so highly commercialized and publicized and fed to us through all of the algorithms that when I talk to people, and I say sometimes you have to have almost like a personal protection system around you, like a kryptonite barrier to not absorb all of that negativity that's coming at you, because I think that's the root cause of it. And the other cause, I believe, is this idea of scarcity, right? That there's never enough. There's never enough. There's not enough. You always have to scramble. You always have to scramble. And we we're not taught to have a healthy relationship with money, right? It's not taught in school for sure. And yeah, so I think it's education around the relationship with money. It's it's connected to absorption of negativity around it, and this idea of and then that idea of scarcity. And I think also maybe the fourth pillar is we are often sold a bill of goods that that um, appears positive or appears constructive, right? Let's say I'll give you an example like The Secret, right? Or the law of attraction, or all of those areas connected to money and abundance and things like that. What we're not so we're given a kind of a solution, right? Or a learning or a teaching, but we're not it, how do I say this? It's not an ongoing living organic thing within you, because you kind of get the idea, right? And it might work out for you for a little while or a little bit, or you might see some semblance of it. But underneath it is this vat of negativity and storytelling. So for me, it's it's those sort of four pillars, and the last one being this idea of negative storytelling just below the surface of all that positivity, right? Some people call it toxic positivity, but whatever it is. you look at the motivational poster, or you look at your vision board, or you look at your, you read The Secret, you read The Law of Attraction, get into some Bob Proctor stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'm going to journal that. And then you walk away from your journal and you don't hold it. So that's why the relationship with money is kind of an ongoing experience that you need to have without the storytelling.
Cool. So I've had experiences with pretty much everything you just mentioned, from Bob Proctor to The Secret,
Yep.
and what I find makes up kind of we'll call the new age bullshit aspect of those things
Yeah.
is sometimes people wake up, and I'll say myself, waking up to my spirituality. Well, I'm just going to be spiritual. I'm just going to meditate. I'm just going to think affirmations, and everything will be better. And
Right.
to some extent, my own mood got better, but without action, nothing
Yes.
really changes. Yeah. So I've so
Totally.
many people, I'm expanding my spiritual self. I'm like, yeah, but you're still physical. Like oftentimes the most spiritual thing you can do is get in the mud and do something. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
You're
there's
absolutely
so
right.
much spiritual negativity around money anyway. Like,
Yes.
oh, everything should just be free and give your gifts and all that. And like, that's not the way we live.
No, and the negativity really arises from the fact that, human beings can do bad things with money, right? But it's not the energy of money that's bad, right? And you're absolutely right. You have to have action. And actually, Mel Robbins did a really good podcast when she first launched on goal setting.
Mm.
And I think it's like episode 39 or something. So it was early days when she first launched her podcast. It's worth your audience taking a look at, because there's a whole new science around proper goal setting.
Mm.
And so really that idea of, okay, this is what I want to manifest, but it's not going to happen just with positive thinking and, sitting and burning some incense, right? There's got to be a plan. So Mel Robbins' goal setting podcast, that's a great one to kind of get that connection from woo-woo to practical,
Yeah. Cool. I'll definitely track that down, and we'll add a link to the show notes.
Yeah, it's good.
So we've talked about lack being rooted in fear and scarcity. So what about an abundant mindset? What does that rely on? What can that be rooted in?
That's really practice. It's really almost like a daily meditative practice, right? And I go back to this idea of a personal protection system. You have got to arm yourself against all of the forces that are going to bring you down, right? So whether it's daily meditation and mindfulness, or sound therapy, reading books, turning off the news, turning off social media, if you know that if you want to go and have a box of candy, right, which is basically social media, know what you're doing, be aware of it, right? Be intentional about your social media that you're gonna be on, right? Because I think so often we go through life, when you go through the day, much of it without intention, much of it can be, not for everybody, but much of it can be just a routine, right? And when you're just doing the routine without intentionality in every moment, you succumb to the sort of the forces of negativity. So personal protection barrier, get your wall up, and not in a bad way, right? Don't put the masks back on, but get your wall up to protect yourself from anything that will take you down and take you. And then for me, it's all about practice, daily meditation, and reading also the right things. There's a beautiful book out called Love Money, Money Loves You. And that's all about the relationship you have with the energy of money, right? And it's just so good. So, and it's about embodiment of that, right? I often say to people, it's also, what radio station do you want to be playing on, right?
Yeah, money is really an amplifier of your existing energy. And if you're an
Yeah.
asshole and you get rich, you're going to be a rich asshole. If you're a kind, loving person that get rich, you'll be a kind, loving, rich person. It's
Yeah,
just
totally.
yeah. It's not money's fault for
No.
any of that. Yeah,
No,
cool.
it's just it's an energy. That's all it is. And there's
It's
enough
funny,
of it.
all the talk of energy and boundaries, think it was like in 2009, I did my first like energy programs, and creating an energetic boundary was one of the first things that we learned. And it really was, it's the power of visualization, because everything is energy, and you imagining things is really you doing energy work.
Yeah.
So we would
absolutely.
visualize a ring of roses around us anywhere we went, and the roses would absorb negative energy, and you would just travel on it. So you were truly making a bubble. And I would experiment with this and check in and visualize, and I'd look at these roses in my mind, and they would be dried up and decrepit after I went to the mall or something. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, all right, let's get rid of those and replace them. And I encourage people, however silly it sounds, play with it. And you can make your imaginary boundary out of anything, but let it decide that something's out there that absorbs the negativity instead of you. And just see if you notice something.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And, if you want to get into kind of the science of stuff, you can dive into things like Qigong and Joe Dispenza, who I'm sure is doing great work around that, which 20 years ago, they couldn't measure this stuff, right? Now you can actually measure it. It's like, oh, wow, that's real.
Yeah.
So,
the people that will like, I'll wait for science to prove something. I'm like, well, you can be waiting a long time. You'll be covered in leeches if that was the mindset of your ancestors, right? But I find that science keeps catching up to spirituality and proving the power that the mystics swore to us thousands of years ago was the true power of the self and the collective. It's all kind of not coming true because but the evidence is now appearing before us, right? So it's great. Is there anything top of mind that you wish more men knew?
The one thing that I'd love to leave people with, whoever I speak with, is this statement that it does not have to be like this. I think we can get so caught up in our own narratives and stories and depression and anxiety and mental health challenges that a lot of people lose hope. And what I like to say to people is don't lose hope. Reach out, especially if you're a guy, because we don't talk about these things and we're not educated on them in school. Reach out, find your circle, find your tribe. And it does not have to be like this. There's ways out.
Yeah. You can say enough already.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. We can just close the circle there perfectly.
Cool. So Colin, what's the best way for people to find out everything that you're up to?
Gosh, I have a website, colinkingsmill.com, which I hate updating. I probably should. I have podcasts from a year and a half ago on there. That's probably the best way to find me. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's it. I'm on Instagram, but I've grown tired of Instagram and Facebook for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's just watching them in the news these days. But
I'll share one more tip because you're talking about social media and the negativity of it. Over a year ago, I turned off all my social media notifications.
Oh, nice.
Everything. And now I just said, oh, I wonder what's up on Facebook. Oh, I wonder what's up on Instagram. The phone doesn't own me anymore. And it's the best, most liberating thing I've done with technology ever. So.
Yeah, I think I need to do the same with X these days. So thank you for that. Yep.
Cool.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, Colin, it was great to talk with you, connect with you. I got bonus time with you because the internet tried to damage our relationship earlier this week.
It did. That was, but it's good. I'm glad we could reconnect quickly and finish this first conversation. I feel like you and I could talk forever.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. So I'm sure this will not be the last time we see each other.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, and let's make that true for the audience too. So wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for meeting me and Colin. Visit realmenfeel.org. See a blog post for this episode. We'll have links to all the various things we mentioned, podcasts, resources, books. Wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, please subscribe, follow, like, share this with someone, post a review or a comment, do all the things you can do. And if you're feeling challenged with your worth, consider booking a clarity call with me. That's a free conversation to just poke around in you. You visit theandygrant.com/talk. And you can always reach out to me at realmenfeel@gmail.com. And until next time, be good to yourself.